With less than 2 weeks until the Game Week 1 deadline, we are starting to finalise those Game Week 1 drafts. And with Haaland scoring a hat-trick and Mo Salah looking electric, I have ended up removing one of those from my team, controversially, and we're going to discuss that in today's video. So as always, if you look forward to it, please do drop a like in for 200. And of course, if you're not already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So before we get into my Game Week 1 team, I just wanted to quickly give you a bit of an update on my current chip strategy, because I think it's really important this season for FPL managers to have a bit of an understanding when they plan on using their wildcard. If you didn't know already, we can roll our transfers through wildcards. In previous seasons, if you use your wildcard and you had 2 free transfers available, that would then default back to 1 once you've used the wildcard. That isn't the case this season, and we can roll transfers up to 5 times, basically meaning we have mini wildcards throughout the season. So for me, I think using an early wildcard in Game Week 4 is the current chip strategy that I am leaning towards, and I want to give you a couple of reasons why. First and foremost, I think it means we can really target teams that have great opening fixtures. So you can see the list of teams here. These are mainly the teams that when I'm building my Game Week 1 draft, I am looking to prioritise in particular. So Newcastle, I think, are really there to target. Longer term after Game Week 3, they have a few mixed fixtures. Arsenal are a really good example. Game Weeks 1 and 3 are great. Game Weeks 4 and 5 are terrible. And if you're looking to not wildcard in those opening weeks, then maybe Arsenal become off the table. But I think Game Week 1 against Wolves, Game Week 3 against Brighton are too good to ignore for our sides. I also think, moving away from the fixtures, what I love about using a wildcard early in Game Week 4 is that we need to remember this is off the back of a Euros. There are plenty of premium players that haven't actually gotten back with their teams during pre-season. And I do think in these opening weeks, if there ever are going to be differentials to target, it's going to be in this period. The likes of Cole Palmer, the likes of Bukayo Saka, we know are going to be brilliant FPL options. But I maybe would say that if there is ever a time this season where they're not going to be good options, it's going to be these opening 3 game weeks where other players in their teams have had 2 weeks to get up to match fitness and really bed into their new systems, like an Nkunku at Chelsea's Maresca side, and also people in this Arne Slot system. So that is the one thing I really do like as well. We can take a few punts in these opening game weeks, knowing that if we get it terribly wrong, we don't have to panic. We wildcard in Game Week 4 to bring those players into our side. So we're only really having issues in those opening 1 to 3 weeks. So that is something that I really do like. And the final thing about me having a premeditated Game Week 4 wildcard is that that is the absolute worst case scenario. If we were to get a situation where Game Week 4 rolled on, I looked at my team and thought to myself, actually, this team's going really well right now. I can just push the wildcard back to Game Week 6 when other FPL managers are planning to do so. What that means is that if I've got unlucky, I've targeted all those differentials early on and I've hit lots of points, fingers crossed, and it means that I can postpone the wildcard later on down the line while other managers might be jumping on those players that I got on early doors. So it is a bit of a risky strategy. I usually like being a bit more of a safe and conservative manager, but I do think off the back of a season where we've had the Euros, some of those safe players that we usually fall back on aren't actually going to be match fit, and I do think maybe it is the opportunity to be a bit of an aggressive manager in these opening weeks. So with that said, let's move on to my current team and give you a bit of an idea on exactly the players that I am targeting. So moving into the current goalkeepers, and you guys will know who tune into the channel that I am usually very, very much against going for goalkeepers that are anything above 4.5 million. I really think long term that is not the strategy to go for. However, in my current draft, I have got one of the most expensive goalkeepers in the game in Arsenal's Raya, and I do need to explain why. So, as I spoke about, for me, I am only looking at those opening 3 game weeks. And with Arsenal, I think Game Week 1 is brilliant against Wolves. I think Game Week 3 is decent against Brighton. Game Week 2 away against Aston Villa might not be the best fixture, but I still back Arsenal in pretty much any fixture to keep a clean sheet. And I think that will be the case again going forward into this season. And we spoke about with Raya. I know exactly what I'm getting with him. And importantly, I think the ownership in the Arsenal defence is still going to be quite high. Saliba, one of the most owned defenders in the game. So if I can get a bit of Arsenal coverage at 0.5 million cheaper in the shape of Raya, I think that's a good investment for my team, knowing that if I plan a wildcard in a game week 4, that's when I bring in my 4.5 million goalkeeper. Because right now, I think, like a lot of managers, we don't really know exactly who the best 4.5 million goalkeeper is. We know Chelsea have got a couple, but we don't really know who the number one is. Forest have got about 1,000 goalkeepers, and there will be one there that emerges at 4.5 million. And again, we got an injury to Verbruggen and Flecken. We don't really know if we can trust him. So what this does, it gives us confidence in a goalkeeper in those opening weeks, but it also covers us for that high ownership that is going to be in those opening weeks as well. Knowing that in game week 4, if we do wildcard, we should have an understanding then who is the long-term goalkeeper to target for our teams. And then we don't have to worry about them longer term. I feel comfortable having Raya. In terms of the backup goalkeeper, I've just gone for somebody who is really lowly owned. My concern for those managers that I go for Matt Turner, he is the most owned goalkeeper in the game at 4 million. The big issue with that is, first and foremost, he isn't even the second goalkeeper at Forest now that they've signed Carlos Miguel. So this is the problem. If a 4 million option does emerge, what is going to happen is everybody is going to sell Matt Turner and you're going to see his price fall beyond 4 million. It could go to 3.9, 3.8. It's a very, very low chance of that happening. But if it does, when you go to wildcard, you're going to already have a goalkeeper that has lost value, meaning you've got less value in your wildcard team. Going for a lowly owned 4 million goalkeeper is just the way to go because there aren't any 4 millions that are actually starting for their respective teams. So moving into the defenders, and as I touched on in the intro of the video, there is no Salah or Erling Haaland. So it means with that money that has been freed up, we can go a little bit more expensive in other positions. And I've decided to do that with those defenders here. So what I'm going to do here is give you a bit of an idea on how my team would look in the opening 3 game weeks in terms of a fixture rotation. Now, of course, for me, if I'm spending 7 million on a Trent, he is playing every single fixture. And when we see the fixtures there for Liverpool, of course, we are going to be playing him in all of those irrespective. The only thing I will say on Trent is that we haven't actually seen him in pre-season yet. He is a perfect example of somebody that we just assume is going to be a brilliant FPL option in this Arnie slot team. But I just want to state that he is definitely not a lock in my team because I actually want to see him feature in this team. But I think he is going to be unbelievable value at 7 million. I'm just a little bit scared that if he does hit it off in the opening weeks, I don't have him, his price could actually skyrocket early on. And then when I come to wildcard in game week 4, he is going to be a player that is just costing that little bit more that I didn't really want to pay. Vardy out at 6 million is just a safe bet into that Man City defence. But it's worth noting in pre-season, we haven't seen that gallivanting left back that we saw at the back end of last season. So I'm questioning whether he is worth 6 million right now. But for a piece of that Man City defence in game week 2 at home against Ipswich, I feel like it probably is worthwhile nonetheless, as we know he has double-digit potential in him. And the other premium is going to be Pedro Porro. Now, again, for me, looking to wildcard in game week 4, I think Porro is the perfect example of a player that some managers won't want to bring in because if they're planning on longer term wildcarding, the fixtures get a little bit tricky for Pedro Porro. However, for game weeks 1 and 2, he is just one of those perfect examples who has potential clean sheets, but also that attacking option. We've seen 2 goals already from him in pre-season, and I really think if I'm going to wildcard early, I can't not have Pedro Porro in this team. So as you can see, Trent and Vardy are just going to play every fixture regardless, and Porro is going to play the opening 2. Realistically, I probably am just going to play all 3 of those. There could be an argument maybe to get Harwood Bellison in game week 2, but let's be real, who am I going to play in front of him of the other 3? So with this premium option, it means that I can have 2 4 millions in Harwood Bellis and Barco. Not planning to play either of them at any point, but what I do like about Barco in particular is if he goes off early doors, he is the 4 million that I think's price could skyrocket, and I want to make sure I at least have an investment in him. Even if I'm not planning on playing him in any of the opening 3, he could then be in my team in preparation for a wildcard 4 when those fixtures do eventually turn. I'm not having to pay real loads of money for him. I do think there are a good 4.5 million defenders available, but I think if we can get those premiums who have attacking returns, that is the route to go for right now in my particular team. So moving into the midfielders, and as you can see on your screens, no Mo Salah. Yes, that is the premium that I have sacrificed in this team. I need to explain why, because I get it. Mo Salah is FPL GOAT. He is one of the best around, so I need to explain why he isn't in this team. So let's go into that first and foremost. With Liverpool, I know the fixtures are fantastic in the opening weeks. However, what we know of Mo Salah is being the FPL GOAT under Jurgen Klopp's reign, We, of course, are going into the Arnie slot reign. And with the preseason games that we have seen so far, and that is all we can go off right now, it has to be said, we can't really come to any full conclusions right now. I feel like with Mo Salah, under Jurgen Klopp, everything was basically going through him. Firmino dropping short. Basically, how can we get Sadio Mane and Mo Salah as close to goal as possible to score? With this Arnie Slot team right now, I haven't seen enough to suggest that he is absolutely the talisman in this team where everything's being fed through Mo Salah. We're seeing him still as a bit of a chance creator, as we saw in their goal in the most recent friendly. And I don't necessarily think I've seen enough to say to myself, Mo Salah is essential in this Liverpool team. I think other players have come to the fore right now, and one of those is going to be Diogo Jota at 7.5 million. He's played equally decent minutes compared to Mo Salah. Both have looked razor sharp during pre-season. And I do think there is going to be a place for Diogo Jota in this team. Now, do I think Diogo Jota gets more minutes than Mo Salah in the opening 3 fixtures? Probably not, but do I think they're going to be half of that of Mo Salah? I think the answer is no. I do think Jota is a really nice alternative to Mo Salah at such a cheaper price. And again, we need to remember, I'm not going without Mo Salah for 6, 7, 8 game weeks. The plan is just to get through those first 3 game weeks. And based on what I've currently seen in pre-season, I think Jota gives us a slight alternative to Mo Salah, which means that we can upgrade other parts of this team. So that's what I'm currently leaning towards right now. But of course, if I do see Mo Salah become a real talisman in that team, then that might change things in those opening few days before game week 1. But I really like what I'm seeing from Diogo Jota, playing multiple positions and getting into real good goal scoring opportunities. Nkunku has been in all of my drafts, and what I've seen so far, he is the perfect example of an alternative to a premium. What I mean by that is I'm going to put the current most expensive players in the game on your screens right now. And what I do think with this Wildcard 4 strategy is that I can actually go for the cheaper alternatives to the premium with a bit of an argument. So we've already touched on why I'm going for Jota over Salah right now. Cole Palmer, 10.5 million. Now, of course, I do think he is the best Chelsea asset. We haven't seen him in a single minute in pre-season under Enzo Maresca. He obviously will find a place for Cole Palmer, but Nkunku's played every minute in pre-season. He's been scoring goals, getting used to this Maresca system. And I do think in the opening 3 fixtures, Nkunku gives us that alternative to Cole Palmer. And then when I wildcard in game week 4, that is when I can bring in Palmer if he does prove to be absolutely essential. In terms of Bukayo Saka at 10 million, another example of a player that hasn't played a single minute in pre-season. Meanwhile, Odegaard, who has entered my team, I want to target those Arsenal fixtures as I mentioned. And with Odegaard, I am getting exactly that. I know he's going to play every minute, whereas Saka still hasn't returned to the team as of yet. So I think a 1.5 million saving can be made, knowing once again that I can wildcard in game week 4 to bring in Bukayo Saka if he does hit the ground running, which I don't think he necessarily will do. The one on this list that I don't think we can really have an alternative, but I've gone for it anyway, is going to be Son. He's looked incredible in pre-season. And as I mentioned, if I'm going to wildcard early, I do need to attack those Spurs fixtures. And I've done that in the shape of Kulusevski at 6.5. Now, I know there are a lot of rumours right now about Dominic Solanke being bought, but I don't necessarily see him being bought and coming straight into this Ange team. I think there will be a few weeks for that to actually be integrated if it does happen. So I think Son is the one that actually can't be replaced. I think he will outscore the other alternatives quite considerably. However, we've seen Kulusevski have a brilliant pre-season playing as the number 9. And I do think, regardless of what happens with the Solanke deal, that will continue to happen in those opening weeks. And as I mentioned, that's all I need from my team, because if Solanke does get bought and in game week 4 starts to get integrated into the Spurs team, that's absolutely fine. I've had my 3 game weeks of Kulusevski as the forward while others have avoided him. And now I can wildcard in game week 4 and bring in, rightly so, the best options in their positions. And in terms of Man City, the reason why I've gone for no midfielder is De Bruyne and Foden haven't even appeared in pre-season. So I can't even imagine having either of those in my team. So that is why I've gone for the alternatives of Odegaard to Saka, Nkunku to Palmer, Jota to Salah, and Kulusevski to Son. I do think with my aggressive strategy, I can jump on those alternatives available. And Hudson-Odoi is just the perfect foil at 5.5 million with those opening fixtures for Nottingham Forest. I think it's really, really important to have 8 playing attackers in our teams, because when we drop down to 4.5, I think we really are trusting on our front three to play each and every week. So I do like Hudson-Odoi at 5.5, but if you want to go cheaper, I think Rodgers, I think Oscar Bob, and a Man United are brilliant alternatives. And finally, moving into the forwards here, and of course the big dog, Erling Haaland, is in the team. So I need to touch on this, obviously, because I have gone for Erling Haaland as my premium as opposed to Mo Salah. Now, I want to say there will be a Mo Salah Erling Haaland draft coming out later on in the week, which is a bit more updated. I've already done a previous draft of Salah and Haaland, but of course, each and every day evolves based on preseason. So the reason why I'm currently going for Erling Haaland, and it isn't because he scored a hat-trick against Chelsea and they're playing him in game week 1, but I just think right now, when I'm looking to build a team, I want to make sure that I'm investing in the teams that I know exactly what I'm getting from. So, for example, with Man City and Erling Haaland, I know regardless of the players that are playing for Man City, and of course, the absence of Rodri and all will make a difference, but I just know for sure Erling Haaland is going to be at the end of everything good that Man City do in these opening game weeks. Everything is going to be filtered through him to put the ball in the net. And that is the main reason why I'm going for him over Mo Salah. I don't know exactly what I'm getting from Mo Salah as of right now. And for me, if it's a toss-up between the two, I'd rather go for the confidence in Haaland, knowing that he's going to play as striker every single minute and that he knows the system inside out. Might take a few weeks of Mo Salah to get accustomed to that Arne Slot system. So that is the reason why, for me, I want the safety blanket of Erling Haaland and obviously a piece of Ipswich at home in game week 2. Not really having to explain anything at Alexander Isak, 8.5 million, basically owned by everybody, nearly 60% owned in the game. Will he actually live up to the hype? Probably not. We know how FPL works out, but I just think it's a risk going without him. And what I do like as well, again, is that with him, with our wildcard in game week 4, after that they got Wolves away, which could be tricky, Fulham away, which can always be a tough game, then Man City at home in game week 6. So that gives me a little bit of time to maybe reassess, maybe move away from him if I want to and bring in someone like an Ollie Watkins whose fixtures start to turn really good. And it gives me that flexibility to reassess on whether Alexander Isak truly is just untouchable at 8.5 million. And finally, we've gone for Fulham's Muniz. Now, previously I had Chris Wood, but I do think there could be rotation with Awoni once he gets fully fit. And I've got the coverage of Nottingham Forest with Hudson-Odoi at a cheaper price. And I think with Muniz, with those opening fixtures, yes, game week 1 is not ideal, but beyond that, they are brilliant. And we saw a really, really good player last season. Could it have been a bit of a purple patch breakout season and he might not replicate it? Potentially, but I also like Fulham in general. I think they have a good manager. They've invested well with the likes of Smith Rowe. And I think Muniz is a great investment at 6 million. But of course, if we need to free up funds in this team, that could come down to a 5.5 in a João Pedro or an Armstrong if we need to put 0.5 into this team to upgrade other departments. But that's how the team's currently looking. I'm really happy with the balance. Of course, no Mo Salah is a risk, but I think going without him means I can balance the team up really well. So what I'm going to do quickly is just show you how this team would look between game weeks 1 and game week 3, because if this early wildcard is going to work in game week 4, I have to roll my transfers in the weeks beforehand. Otherwise, it does really completely negate my chip strategy. So taking a look at how my team will look between game weeks 1 and game weeks 3, of course, I'm looking to wildcard in game week 4, but it can be flexible if I hit the ground running with this team that I have selected. And as I stated, with me wildcarding in game week 4, it is really important that I try and roll my transfers in the opening 3 game weeks. Of course, injuries happen and those things can't be controlled, but what I can control is strength and depth in this team, and that is why I've gone for a really deep attacking 8 where any of those can feature at any point, and that's why I've gone for the strong back 3, because I know I can play them in any fixture and I've got at least some playing 4 million defenders if I require them. So if injuries don't happen, I know that this team can comfortably be rolled throughout the game week. So obviously you can't roll a game week 1 transfer, but game week 2 we can roll one, game week 3 we can roll one. If a wildcard in game week 4, you don't roll a transfer. So I'll come into game week 5 with 2 free transfers. If I can roll again, I want to get myself to around 4 free transfers so that when the fixture swings happen once again, I can have a bit of a mini wildcard when maybe other managers are looking to activate their own wildcard. And as I said, this is why maybe being a bit of aggressive strategy, going for those differentials early doors means I can capitalize on some early points. So this is how the team would look for game week 1. Right now, the captaincy on Alexander Isak for that brilliant fixture at home against Southampton. I really feel confident going with that. It's worth noting I didn't touch on Anthony Gordon not being in the team. Main reason being is a lot of rumours about him, a little bit concerned about whether he gets a late move to Liverpool, and that basically negates my problems with my team because then I'll have to make a transfer, which is not ideal. And also the same applies for Crystal Palace's Eze. Few rumours still about him leaving. Don't feel confident investing in someone like that until I have an absolute clarity that they are part of the manager's plans in those opening weeks. Otherwise, it is a big issue for our team. So those players might be a consideration once we get those updates. But in terms of this team, it picks itself. The only thing about it is Nkunku's looked good in pre-season throughout, but just based on the fixture, he would naturally be the first sub on my team. And again, I need to mention, if nobody's on this right now, get yourself on the Google Chrome extension called FPL Plus by Fantasy Football Fix. It completely integrates with the official Premier League site. It is incredible. You don't have to worry about any third-party sites. I am literally on the official site and I can go through a planner, which is incredible on the top of your screen. So Game Week 1 looks like this. Raya in goal. I've got all the coverage of the top teams. Moving into Game Week 2, the only real change here that I would do, and I don't love it, is benching someone like a Hudson-Odoi and bringing in Christopher Nkunku. Obviously, Odegaard has the tricky fixture away against Aston Villa, but if I'm going to pay 8.5 million for someone, I don't really want to bench him at any point. I just think like that's my own personal pride there, where I think to myself, I don't really want to be paying that and benching him as well. So I think right now this is probably the best 11. Don't love Hudson-Odoi on the bench, but equally I can live with it. And again, because I'm paying a lot for these back three, they look good in any fixture. In particular, Game Week 2, I could see 3 clean sheets there and attack and returns from all of those defenders. So I do love that defence. I think the rest of the team picks itself. The front three look great. And of course, I've got the captaincy on Erling Haaland. If I had Mo Salah, of course, Brentford at home looks great as well. But I've got that coverage with Diogo Jota, which I don't feel I could have if I didn't go for Erling Haaland. I don't feel comfortable having Phil Foden right now, not knowing if he is going to play. And finally, Game Week 3, the final game week with this particular team, unless things go incredibly well, and it means I can actually postpone the wildcard. Still think that the team looks okay, but of course this is where some of the trickier fixtures do come into play. Newcastle versus Spurs, that'll be the first real game versus game fixture, which isn't ideal for my particular squad. We've also got Liverpool away against Man United, but again, do I think that's a terrible fixture? Probably not. I think Man United is still a little bit of a yo-yo club. We don't know exactly what we're going to get from them. So I think with Liverpool, they can still score goals, and I'm absolutely fine with that. The rest of the team, I've got Muniz away against Ipswich, which could be a great fixture. Hudson-Odoi at home against Wolves. I don't really feel like I'm missing out on many fixtures. Coming down to the fixture ticker here, I've got coverage of the Arsenal game at home against Brighton, which is great. I don't have any Aston Villa away against Leicester, but if I'm looking to wildcard in Game Week 4, I can then jump on Watkins for those 2 brilliant home fixtures. So I can live without Watkins for 1 game week. And then, of course, Brentford at home against Southampton. But do I really feel that inclined to have a Brentford attacker? Not really. And I feel like I've got investment in the other teams who have great fixtures there. So for me, having that investment in those opening 3 fixtures covers me, knowing that a wildcard in Game Week 4 can then move me on to those Aston Villa assets when I know they are definitely great picks, and other teams that are emerging and players that feel essential for our teams. But that is how we are looking for those opening 3 game weeks. Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's latest Game Week 1 team selection. As I mentioned, the team is ever evolving, but I do feel really comfortable with the strategy that I have in place of wildcarding in Game Week 4, being aggressive on some of those differentials when I can, knowing that some of the premiums might take a few weeks to actually get up and running, knowing that I'll wildcard into them once I have a few more game weeks of data. So that's how we're looking. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, if you haven't already, please do drop a like on the video. And of course, smash that subscribe button. Have an amazing day. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you real soon. Cheers.